we have come to a crisis in this war. The need for men has not lessened. The need for Australia to play a part as becomes a nation of free people is not affected by recent events.
Prime Minister Billy Hughes was determined to convince the public that Australia needed conscription. It was 1917, the middle of the First World War, and there was a shortage of men volunteering to fight. He wanted to be able to force people to fight for their country. That's known as conscription, and by this point, most other countries involved in the war were already doing it. But it was controversial, and for years it had divided Australia. The First World War had been going since mid-1914, and all of Europe was caught up in it. And Australia, as a member of the British Empire, had to go along. Some young men wanted to join the army for adventure and excitement. A few even lied about their age to do so. And while tens of thousands quickly enlisted, so many in fact they were sometimes turned away, in a few short years it was a different story. Many had already been killed or wounded during the campaign at Gallipoli, Australia's first real involvement in the war. And thousands more were dying on the Western Front in France.
With more young soldiers like you, we may be able to win this war.
Labor Prime Minister Billy Hughes believed making young men enlist to fight overseas was the only way. So he took it to the people, holding a plebiscite. Basically, a vote of the whole country. Some believed Australians had a duty to fight. There were campaigns and posters promoting the need for conscription to protect the country. Others were strongly opposed, like the Women's Peace Army led by Vita Goldstein.
You, who give life, cannot. If you think deeply and without bias, vote to send any mother's son to kill, against his will, some other mother's son.
On October 28, 1916, it went to a vote. The nation answered no, but only just. Soon after, the Prime Minister was forced to leave the Labor Party because most of his party didn't support conscription. So he went on to start the Nationalist Party instead. The Nationalist Party got into government, and then there was a plebiscite for the second time. On the 20th of December 1917, the vote was another failure. Conscription was never successfully brought in. But by the war's end in November 1918, a total of 416,809 men had voluntarily enlisted, close to 40% of the male population aged between 18 and 44. There were even Aboriginal men who volunteered despite racist laws that tried to stop them. But the conscription debate wasn't over. In the Second World War, people could be forced to fight in Australia, and in some cases overseas. Then, in 1964, conscription was brought in for the Vietnam War. Every 20-year-old man in the country was part of a nationwide lottery. If their birthday was drawn out, they were forced to go and fight. So there were big protests, and many young men refused to go. Some Australians didn't believe the war in Vietnam was necessary and that Australia shouldn't be fighting.
There's absolutely no legal right to stop us going over there.
In 1972, the conscription law was scrapped, 3 years before the war in Vietnam ended. It would be the last time Australians were sent to fight in a war against their will, and the policy of conscription would remain a controversial part of our country's history.